Hey guys, welcome back. Besiege early access coverage. This is episode 3. I'm Enigmius, and today doing something a little bit silly. Again, we're just trying to focus on a couple of very simple components to kind of work our way through until we can start building things that are a little more complex and have the components familiar to people who have been watching this series right the way through. So in this case, we're building a very simple kind of mallet sort of thing that's going to hit boulders at our target. Now, I've sped this early section up because we're just building the basic frame for our mallet. You can see that area, the upright that we just built is going to hold the hinge that will hold the mallet so that it can swing back and forth. And we're just going to put some wheels on it for the sake of having wheels. I don't intend to be driving it around. And we're on the same map that we're in the last episode. We've got the archers on the wall. So we've got the wall to destroy, and we've got the archers to destroy our machine to see what it looks like. And there's also a bomb right in front of the wall. We don't have to do anything special. It's already there. We just have to touch it with something and it will explode and destroy the wall for us. So there's kind of that little bit of extra Mythbusters oomph in this little experiment. You can see we just put the hinge and the upright there that's hanging down. So now we can build down from the hinge, and that will be the beginnings of our little mallet that's going to swing back and forth and hit the balls so that they move forward in some fashion, quickly or not. And we'll see how it works. So it's really nothing particularly crazy. It was an idea that popped into my mind, and I said, you know what, that would be a fun thing to do, and we can do it without having to get too crazy with the components. The only new component that we're working with here really is the hinge. But by the end of this, we're also going to show you the very basics of changing the controls around so that you can have different things going on with your machine. Because currently, if you put, say for example, the relevant example in this case, if you put a bunch of different contracting springs on the machine, they will all share the same keybind. So when you press the key to have one spring contract, they all contract. So we can change the key bindings around so that we can use different keys and have different springs contracting at different times, and that'll be sort of very important to having this thing work the way that we want it to. But just to get it to work in its most basic form, you can see now I put a couple of wee little uprights on the very front of it, and now we're connecting the back of the mallet to one of the uprights with a spring, and then we go around to the other side and we do the same thing. So we'll have a spring on either side, and then when we press the button to contract the springs, the mallet will swing forward, and we've got that little section across the front there where we'll put our boulders. We can't obviously use the flaming boulders this time around because it would immediately ignite the entire machine. We don't want that. We don't. Well, I mean, sometimes it's fun to set things on fire for no reason other than to set them on fire, but in this case we've got a goal that we're trying to achieve. So there we've got the two boulders, we've got the mallet attached with springs so that we can swing it forward. We've got our wall with the archers and the bomb in front of it, and when we press play, we just press L, it contracts the springs, the whole thing moves a little bit, it hits the bomb explodes, kills all the archers, punches a hole in the wall, not before the archers manage to damage one of the uprights, so the whole thing is kind of sagging a little bit. Not a bad first test, and again, it's really simple, it's silly, this is how I like to learn with stuff like this. It makes it so much easier than trying to do complex things right away. You give yourself a chance to play with things incrementally, and then you build an understanding of each piece, so that when later on you go and you want to do other things that are a little bit more crazy, you can put all those different understandings together and things work a little bit more than, as opposed to trying to do everything all at once. Now, I replaced the boulders with spiked balls, and I thought that they would be like a projectile like the boulders. They're not. But what I decided that I wanted to do was extend the springs back a little bit farther where they contact the mallet so that when we contract them, we would get a little bit more force, hopefully, pulling on the springs, pulling the mallet through whatever projectiles we had on the front of the machine, and ideally, causing a little bit more change and giving the projectiles a little bit more velocity. So we have to just remove the springs, and of course I hit the removal button when it was over one of the blocks instead of the springs. We just have to replace the block. It's not a big deal. It's a really simple interface for getting things into place very quickly, as long as you connect to the right things when you're rushing along. So here you can see, instead of having it connected in the middle, now we're connecting in the very back. And we're just replacing the spring. So it's going to work in exactly the same way. It's just going to have the spring starting back farther and hopefully pulling more. And then realizing that the spike balls that I put on the front don't actually move. So the archers destroyed it, and we didn't accomplish anything. They broke our machine, and the spike balls didn't move at all. So we'll put the boulders back on, and we'll try again. See, now that's another component we know about, the spike balls. They don't move. They're not projectiles. So now when we start, actually one of the things before we start, I'm just putting a little bit of armor on the frame so that the archers don't have quite such an easy time of destroying things, because they're basically within a matter of seconds, and the time it takes me to contract the springs, they're destroying at least one upright on the frame, and that's kind of counterproductive. So I just wanted to see if we cover it on armor, how much longer, like, will it last longer? Will the uprights actually survive until our projectiles have hit the bomb and blown up the wall and killed all the archers? That would be kind of the goal, is just a little bit of a test to see how effective the armor plating is without worrying too much necessarily about aesthetics or anything like that. We're just kind of covering the front surfaces, not necessarily worried about all the flat surfaces that could get hit by arrows, just the front ones. And then we can go around and finally give it another try with the mallet, swinging on the boulders towards the bomb in the front. Really straightforward, right? Nothing crazy going on. Just covering it in the different armor plates that were available to us. Now when we hit play, the springs are pulling through a little bit farther. Didn't really seem to help. We managed to kill all the archers. Our frame survived, so that was a successful test, I would say. It's apparently well worth it, at least early on, to have the armor on the frame because it protected it from the arrows. But this is where we need to start doing something a little bit more aggressive with regards to how we're swinging the mallet. So you can see I'm using the control tool and kind of getting a feel for it. Basically, you hit the control tool and then you mouse over any of the components on your bot, and when you select it, you left click it, and it brings up a little UI thing that gives you an opportunity to assign a new key. So the goal here then is we're going to have some springs in the back, so that when we contract them, it'll pull the mallet back, and then we push the key to pull the mallet forward, and it should get a much larger swing going, and theoretically, again, more velocity onto the boulders. Really simple stuff. There's nothing crazy going on. We're just setting ourselves up so that instead of having one button that activates all the springs at the same time, we've got one button that has the 2 springs on the front and one button for the 2 springs on the back, so that we can alternate the contractions. So we line it up, we press play, we pull it back, and then we swing it forward. It's a little bit faster. It's still, I mean, we haven't exactly set any land speed records, but it's better than it was. So the key thing that we've taken away from this is that it's still fun to blow things up. It'll never stop being fun to blow things up. And we can set up the controls so that they could be as simple or as complex as we want them to be. If we need one particular kind of component to behave differently in one area than in the other, we can set it up on its own key binding so that we can control it individually. Not necessarily something that I would use indiscriminately, because you would end up with something that's nearly impossible to control because you can't remember what you bound everything to. But for something like this, it makes a ton of sense to be able to have it split up. It's a very simple, straightforward, useful feature to be able to rebind each individual component separately. But now, since we've basically done our little test and it's over, we can do one more thing, and I'll let you guys guess what this is going to be with bombs on our own. I'll get to work on the next video, so if you want to be notified when I add that video, you can always subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for that are in the information section below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.